Like I mentioned, just when I was passing out, we're going to talk about Symphonie Fantastique. There were two premieres of this piece. The original was in 1830, and the second one was in 1831. And I'll tell you a little bit why there were two premieres when we get to the actual story and motivation, thank you Sam, behind this piece. So the form was very original for its time. In the Romantic era, yes, there was still like traditional through composed pieces, right, like sonata form, rondos, regular symphonies, but there was also programmatic music, right? So this is like Symphonie Fantastique is technically a programmatic symphony, and it's a little unusual because it's in 5 movements. Also, there's a long story that goes along with it, and it's illustrated in the music. It's a lot of text painting going on. And on Wednesday, you'll learn about symphonic poems, like Don Juan by Strauss, which aren't movements per se, it's just one, like an overture. Programmatic symphonies were largely free of classical predictability, right? So in a 4-movement symphony, what is the, have you guys learned that? So what are the movements? Mikey, what's the first movement?
Fast.
Okay. And what's the form, usually?
Oh, sonata.
Yes. Alan, what's the second movement?
Slow.
Slow, right? Sierra, what's the third movement?
It just goes back to the beginning.
The third movement of a symphony?
Oh, I guess I don't know.
Okay, Jacob? Yeah, minuet and trio or scherzo, something, right, usually, and it's in that form, right, minuet and trio. And the last movement, Logan? Fast, right. So this is very different, right, free of that. Yes, and the content ranges from a very descriptive title like La Mer, right, La Mer, and each title of, the movements of each title are just tell you what's happening. Whereas this one has a complete narrative of a story. So some other famous programmatic symphonies, Beethoven's 6th Pastoral, he's got an accompanying poem for each movement. Scheherazade is a big one. Even though it's technically called a symphonic suite, it's really a symphony. And it's based off of the old story of 1001 Nights, and lists Faust Symphony, which is characters after Goethe, like Faust, Gretchen, and Mephistopheles. All right, so Symphonie Fantastique. The subtitle is An Episode in the Life of an Artist in 5 Parts. And the artist is not loosely based, but very based on Berlioz himself. This whole idea of the story started when he went to go see a production of a Shakespeare play, and one of the actresses on stage, Harriet Smithson, she has bright red hair, and he fell in love with her immediately. Now we don't know, and I've asked a few different people, and I've tried to look it up, and we don't know if he actually met her before he started writing this piece. Okay, so it's a little, he's a little obsessed at this point. And so then he was inspired to write Symphonie Fantastique. It was his way of getting her attention. At the first premiere, he extended an invitation, but she didn't know him, so she didn't go. So then he premiered it again a year later and extended the invitation, and she came and was overwhelmed with his passion for her that she was like, okay, let's get married. Yeah, it was a little crazy. So the reason that we talk about Symphonie Fantastique, not only that it's a programmatic symphony, but there's this idée fixe, this fixed idea. And it's a recurring theme or character that serves as the structural foundation of a work. And, and for us, on the back side of your, because you guys haven't looked, this is our idée fixe. Like, it's this entire page. That's the whole thing for Harriet, or Estelle as her character in the piece. Whereas when we get to Strauss on Wednesday, the phrases are a little bit long, or a little bit shorter, a few measures, maybe, or 8 measures. But on Friday, when you get to Wagner, right, there's leitmotifs, and the leitmotifs are only about a measure or 2 long. They're very short. So now in the psychology world, and this is very apt for our piece and for our composer, it means an irrational obsession that dominates an individual's thoughts as to determine his or her actions. Okay? So in our story, there's 2 characters. We have the artist and Estelle, Berlioz or Harriet, right? And this idée fixe is found in every movement, whether it's the whole thing or just the opening. We never really hear the end all by itself. So I'll play it right now. So, and it's with nothing else around it, right? So the idée fixe. You can kind of see how Berlioz, or the artist, is thinking about Estelle, right? His opening is very beautiful, and he puts her on a pedestal. But when we get here, right, we have this non-chord tone, right, this A flat, and it's his inner rage and jealousy kind of comes out, and he's not happy that. Did you get one of these, Royal? Okay.
I did.
That his love is unrequited. But she's so beautiful. I love her. But she doesn't love me. But it's okay because she's beautiful and I love her. So the first movement, reveries and passions, or daydreams and passions. And of course, the translations that I'm going to show for you on this slide are the direct translations, right, from French into English, whereas the ones on here are adapted. Okay. So the artist is afflicted by the sickness of the spirit. He's very emotional, he's very vulnerable, very down on himself. Woe is me, the world's out to get me. And so then he sees Estelle, or imagines this perfect woman that is Estelle. And we hear the idée fixe for the first time, and it's in a flirtatious manner. He's kind of nervous, it's in love. So let's listen to that. Okay. Oh man, what is going on with the... Oh, it's still loading, okay. Oh my gosh. There we go. I need to make this smaller. Aha. So we can see it in the score. That's why I'm being picky. It's played by the flute and violins. These are like his heartbeat. He's excited, nervous. It's more and more intense. Okay, so right in this example, it's very innocent, right? This he's infatuated with her, not necessarily obsessed. Okay, and then he gets frustrated and anxious because the love is not back, right? It's unrequited. And he gets in his head, and you can see that he's always on the edge of this nervous breakdown and the jealous rage. And where is the mouse? There it is. Okay. Come on. So, up here is E-Day Weeks, the other winds. Okay, so let's watch it one more time. And what can you tell me about how this what's going on in this variation, based off of what you see here in the E-Day Weeks? Let's watch it one more time and see if we can figure it out. Anybody? Allie?
The ties across the bar line.
Yeah, there's syncopation going on. The style overall is different, right? It's almost everything, even though it's not printed, you can hear it's like marcato or staccato. Yeah. So his image of Estelle is changing just a little bit. And then I already told you this part. He extended the invitation, but she didn't go. So now we're on to our second movement. Okay? And it takes place at a ball. And as you see in your program notes, that's really all that happens. So the purpose of this, Berlioz wants the audience to watch the dancers. This movement features harps, and it's very, if you were to envision Cinderella's ball, right, that's kind of what he's going for here. So we watch the dancers, but we spy on the artist, who in turn is spying on Estelle. Right? She's always just out of reach, and she's, having a ball at the ball. Sorry. But she's, as in the examples I'll show you, she's having a great time. But again, the artist is sad, right? He wants to be with her, but she's happy, that she doesn't know him. Okay, so he spots her in the crowd throughout the whole night. Okay, and go. There you go. And I will need to reduce. There we go. Again, in the upper voices. Could you tell we were at a ball? And that, how could you tell? It was in the waltz, right? It's in a, even though it's in, I'm just going to make something that's not true. And the E-Day Fakes, how has that changed now? It's embellished, but why?
Fancy.
Yeah, I mean to fit, right? To fit with the waltz, right? And she's probably wearing a fancy dress, right? So it's another way to show that she has been embellished. So let's watch it again. And this pedal tone down here is his, always on that edge. He's on edge. She's always right there. thing that I don't know if you guys have picked up on yet, but the idée fixe is always in the treble instruments, whether it's violins, flute, oboe, clarinet. Any guesses?
Why?
It's a girl?
Because it's a woman.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So this goes on and on, right? We watch the dancers, and it's very beautiful and extravagant, but at the end of the night, he spots her one last time. I imagine like the world stands still for the artist. And you'll see that in the music. It's just, there's no accompaniment, it's just the idée fixe. And then there's all this hubbub of rushing and leaving the ball. So now let's listen to that, if it'll let me. There we go. So it's played by clarinet, another treble instrument. When everybody's leaving, a breathless whirlwind. All right. And so that's how that ends. In the next movement, we are in a brand new place, scene in the fields or in the country. Berlioz grew up in the countryside, so he was very familiar with the sounds that would happen. For example, right, there are two alpine shepherds that called to each other. And normally when you think of shepherds and, horn call, or, like you think of horn calls, right? But this was different. He used an English horn and an offstage oboe. And the oboe was offstage, so to give the illusion that they were far away. And even though he didn't explicitly say this in the program notes, you can also guess that it's representing the artist and Estelle. Right? He's here, present, but she's off there, over there. And the movement starts off with just these two instruments. And it goes on for a while. Okay, I'll stop there. But you can see it goes on for a while. And in another excerpt I'll play, the music is always on the edge of a jealous rage. So we'll hear we'll hear idée fixe, but then there's always the underline but there's that heartbeat, him yelling at himself in his head almost. That's what I hear. Right? And even though he gets angry and upset with her, he always returns to thinking about how wonderful she is. Even though she's content without him. Well, he believes that she's content without him, but we don't know that because they've never met. Okay?
So she probably is at this point.
Right. Come on. Oh, no, that's okay. his beautiful Estelle. But then his jealous rage. And this E-Day Fix is interesting because it sounds like it's in 4, but the time signature is 6/8. So we got a little bit of humility going on. It's more compressed, it's getting more intense. This jealous rage. And it just overtakes it. Then he calms down, brings himself back down. So it's always back and forth like that with him. He's, you know, you could make the case that he's like manic, right? Okay, so something that's interesting, and again, there's 2 ways to interpret this. The movement ends with only the English horn solo from the beginning, and there's no callback from the oboe. In the literal sense, because we also hear timpani in the middle, there's a storm coming, right? So the other oboe or the other alpine shepherd is, taken shelter, so that's why there's no response. But you can also take it to mean that, he's forever alone. There's, again, all that self-pity, and he doesn't like himself, and, woe is me. Or you could take it to mean that maybe he's done something bad to Estelle, right? Because she doesn't love him. So his jealous rage has kicked in. So, this is even called alone again naturally. Oh. There we go. So then we're on to our last movement, or it's not the last movement, our next movement, March to the Scaffolds, or the adapted Procession to the Stake. Okay? So this is also very reflective of Berlioz himself. Is it showing up? Oh, what? Okay. That's very strange. So I'll just tell you this, because it's not showing up. So the artist is so upset that he poisons himself with opium. Okay? And Berlioz did go opium himself, so he knew what the artist would expect. And so he poisons himself or overdoses on purpose, right, because Estelle doesn't love him. And so he has very satanic and nightmarish visions, right? Weird, bad things happen. And so in this drug-induced state, he believes wholeheartedly that he's killed Estelle. right? In his jealous rage, at some point he broke and he just killed her because she didn't love him. I guess you got that, because she doesn't return his love. So, what is going on? This is a very strange slide. So again, because of his actions, right, this is a little bit extreme, but he is having an overdose, he is high. He's going to be killed because he killed another person. And this clip I'm going to play for you is very symbolic, right? It starts off with this descending line in our low voices, and it signifies that our hero is going down. And there's also, I mean, at the same time, you'll hear the bassoon go up, and that's kind of his hopes, and like, oh, maybe this won't be, maybe I can get out of this. But then it just, this descending line keeps going, and it gets passed around the orchestra. Crying out loud. Okay, so let's just go here. You guys should check out this website, by the way, if you're interested in this piece. This is San Francisco Symphony. So this is all Michael Pilsner. Okay. This is the hero, right? Our protagonist is going down. So something else that was very popular at this time, when people would have to go to the scaffolds, right, to get either their head chopped off in a guillotine or to be hanged, there'd be a military band that would march with them to the scaffold. And it's very strange, and it doesn't feel right because this military band is happy, right? So it doesn't quite fit because up until this point, we kind of empathize with the artist, but you can see from the society's perspective that this guy was probably not a good guy, and so they're almost rejoicing in his death. So here's our military band, and they're loud. Very brash, but it's on purpose. Okay, so this is, this next part, the end of this movement, is the best version of Berlioz's text painting, in my opinion. And it happens very quickly. So there's one final thought about Estelle. And so we know he's thinking about her because we hear the clarinet, a high instrument, play just the opening phrase of the Idée Fixe. Right, it's one final thought, one last happy memory. Then the orchestra has this huge hit together, right? They play a chord very abruptly, and then the strings do pizzicatos, which symbolizes the head bouncing down the steps. Okay. So we'll watch this a few times.
Head basket was already full.
What was that?
The head basket was already full, so I just let it fall down the stairs.
Yeah, sorry.
Here, I'll just do that. Okay, here we go. So here's our band, right? One single last thought. And then say it. And then the band can this very happy chord, right? G major. And they're supposed to be like obnoxiously loud, particularly the snare drum. Or did you notice that the snare drum was very loud in that recording? Did you guys? So you can see right here, there's the hit, and it goes by fairly fast, and then the pitch is right there, and it goes lower and lower. Right? So the head is rolling down. So let's watch this one final time. Just G major, right? This is just, there's no other chord. Oh, ends in a very happy G major cadence. Yeah, so they're happy he's gone, right? Oh, and I didn't do that. Okay, so you see all this, that's my apologies. So the last movement is the Dream of a Witch's Sabbath, or the Witch's Sabbath, right? We say dream because the artist is still in his opium-induced high, or overdose, or poisoning, and so he's still technically alive, even though he's dreamt that he's killed Estelle and then been killed. So now he's dreaming that he's been dragged down to hell, and so he envisions, his own satanic and nightmarish funeral, and all the creatures that you would envision. In like when we were talking about opera history this morning, right, the occult, right, so you have monsters and goblins and ghosts and sorcerers and witches, and they're all like joining in celebration. I like this one. This one. So you can picture different creatures. And that's a technique that's not used very often, right? You have the piccolo and flute and oboe all bending their pitch, right? That was not done before. But it gives it a really good effect, right? It makes it very creepy. You can see these like spirits dancing around. Let's watch it, listen to it one more time. And see if you can, again, maybe, there you go. See, maybe this is like a troll, right? Some kind of monster. Ghost, maybe witch. This is hard too, because you have to slide together. So we find out very soon that Estelle, because right, she's been murdered, is one of the witches, right? So she died and is now one of the witches. And again, we can tell it's Estelle because the idée fixe is there. However, we also know that this is not Estelle in her normal beautiful form, because of the way that Berlioz has changed it. There's non-chord tones, right? And they're chromatic non-chord tones, so they don't fit. It's also played by the E-flat clarinet and piccolo, which are very sort of vulgar instruments, right? Especially in this manner, something inhuman. And the grace notes and trills, you can hear it, even though, like, when I point it out, you're gonna be like, oh, totally, that she's laughing, and laughing at his death. Like, ha, you got yours, you killed me, and now you're here. And you can see her flying around. But yes, it's done in a very vulgar way. And to add to that, let's reduce this, there we go. One more time. The opening accompaniment is by low oboes and clarinets, which is not, at least for oboes, it's the honky register, I like to say, which of course adds to the vulgarity of this variation of her melody. And then you hear bassoon, well, we'll watch it and then I'll talk about it. And everybody joins in. So what are, there's something that E-flat clarinet and piccolo are both kind of known for in terms of, who said that? Dan? Yeah, they're notoriously always out of tune, right? Or they're really, really hard to tune. So that's another, that's one of the reasons why he picked it, right? He picked these instruments. I can't. I can. So the bassoons, did this remind you of anything? Like, not necessarily related to the story, but when you hear the ba-da-da-da, ba-da-da-da-da, no, it's like bubbles, right? So like a witch's brew, right? So let's, and then you can see the other strings start to join in. So let's do it one more time. Go. My apologies. Let's go back to the beginning. There you go. So it's very happy, right? Again, they're happy that he's dead. They're having a party at his funeral. So another very famous, this is the Dies Irae, is a mass for the dead, and it's, you guys have heard of the Dies Irae, right? Whether it's, you know, Mozart's or Beethoven, or not Beethoven, but or Verdi or Brahms, right? So mass for the dead, played at funerals, and there's one particular version of this Dies Irae that's been around for hundreds and hundreds of years. Right? The bum 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 bum. You'll recognize it hopefully, and it's used in all sorts of places, right? I don't know if you guys know Sweeney Todd, but there's the song Epiphany right before the end of Act 1. And in the bass line, the Dies Irae happens. So again, it suggests something non-human when it's parodied. And in this, right, it's very, the low voices have it in a very traditional chant style. And it's very respected. And then it's mocked by the upper winds and strings. You'll hear it. It's actually done very similarly to the switch version of the Idée Fixe. And then the more we listen to it, it'll go low voices, playing it long, and then trombones playing it twice as fast, and then the upper winds and pits mocking it. Okay, maybe it won't work. But that's it. Oh. So this doesn't have a clip when we can listen to it. So this is the D2, right? So you can read it if you want. So trombone is playing it twice as fast. Parody. So another thing, it comes from the Gregorian chants, right? So where everything is the same length. Okay. No shape. And then the parody again. All right. So that ends our talking about Symphonie Fantastique. Do you guys have any questions before we watch a group actually play it? Yeah, Allie.
That, just the last little blurb thing on the, yeah. What's that instrument that he used?
Eagle foot pipe?
Yeah.
It's kind of like a bassoon,
It's-
trombone, tuba hybrid thing. It's a monstrosity, but it's great.
It's shaped like a bassoon when you play with the trombone mouth.
Yeah, and it's got keys in it.
Right, yeah, that's what I thought. It's, yeah, let's see.
Sounds like a
Do you
bassoon
remember how,
trombone. So technical.
something like that, right? There you go. That.
Yeah.
Huh,
Okay.
okay. Good, thank you for asking. So now we're gonna watch just a little bit of, oh, do I need to do this? Let's see, and, 55. Okay, go. Really? Okay. We'll get there. Cancel. Okay, stop it. Okay, that's what I want. Edit hyperlinks. We'll watch just a little bit of it.
Well, our next
So
piece
this is
of
at the, from the proms a couple years, or, yeah, last year. Okay. So watch it again. homes. All right, thank you guys.
Not now, bro. Researching. I'm in the series.